apples and peanut butter as a snack today. Ew. Gosh, I'm just a mess right now. We're gonna do a little bit of a sit-down chat. This is Peter's birth story. This is my experience, what I went through in my pregnancy and in my postpartum, and things that I wish I would have known. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'll just start. We found out that we were gonna have Peter in December of 2020. He was a total surprise to us. I was on birth control. I had the NuvaRing, and I was super naive. I didn't know how it all worked. I decided to go off the birth control for a season so I could see how that made my body feel and just do some like more natural family planning, you know, like tracking my cycle and stuff like that. And then that wasn't really working that great for us, so we decided to go back on the birth control. And the day we went back on the birth control, I got pregnant with Peter because I thought that it would just kick into my system right away, but little did I know that it takes some time, a few days, I think, to like come back into your system. I really would highly recommend to doing your research on birth control, because it'll, you know, just one little slip up and it'll change your life. I found out that I was pregnant on a work day. I had just had this off feeling. I was working at the time at Marshall's, a retail store. Every morning I would wake up and I was feeling sick and just like off, and I would like contemplate calling into work because COVID was like super intense in 2020, obviously. So I was like, if I don't feel good, I can't go in. So I was like constantly calling in, and then after the morning was over, I would feel fine. And I would be like, well, I called into work, like, am I sick or not? And it was really confusing. I like started tracking what I was eating and I like literally the last thing I was thinking about is that I'm pregnant. Fast forward like a week, I woke up at like 6 in the morning and it just clicked. I think I'm pregnant. I started driving and I got on the freeway and there was this beautiful like golden pink, like, I don't know, beautiful sunrise. And I just felt like this soft voice, like, this is a special day. And I don't know why I felt that. I was pretty sure I wasn't pregnant, but I had that like soft whisper. Went to the grocery store, I picked up a pregnancy test, I drove home, I took it, and a big fat plus sign came up right away, and my heart stopped. Like my jaw dropped. I'm like, there's no way we're having a kid right now. Like, this is like, it was so crazy. So I walked right out, and I didn't share with Cody in any kind of special way. I just I just kind of walked out and I was like, Cody, I'm pregnant. It's a yes. And he was just very serious, and you know, he wasn't like excited or anything like that. To give some context, we got married in April of 2020. So we hadn't even been married a year when we got pregnant, which was disappointing because we had wanted to wait at least a couple years before. We both know we wanted kids, but we didn't know when. Yeah, he was really serious and he looked at the test and he's like, okay, like let's go to the doctor and your doctor and go see if this is real, like go get a second test. And so looking back, we didn't need to go to the doctor because like they just have the same tests that you do at home. They just like do the urine test. They didn't do like a blood test or ultrasound or anything. But we went into my doctor and we waited, like, not even kidding, 45 minutes in the waiting room, just like panicked. And I had drinking so much water because I knew I was gonna have to pee on, you know, the pee in the cup. And so I'm like, I wanna make sure I'm gonna go. So I like pounded water, and when we were there, I peed like 60 times. I was just so nervous too. Gosh, it's gonna make me cry because it was like the best day of my life. We got in and waited for a long time until the doctor came in and just said like, congratulations. And I like couldn't even believe it. Like after that, she started going into this thing like, okay, you're gonna have to stop drinking alcohol. Like you're gonna need to like, I don't even know. Honestly, she was giving me all this like advice, you know, because when you're pregnant, you just got to do things differently. I like didn't even hear her. It was like all like, I was just in a different world in that moment. Me and Cody went right after that to get a smoothie We sat down and Cody said, every single day from this day forward for the rest of our lives, we will spend talking about this child. Like the Lord knew this was when we were supposed to have a baby. I had a very difficult pregnancy. I kept like being told that I was like a couple weeks ahead of when I thought I was. And I think that's because I had a giant baby in me and I'm a small person. So my midwife kept telling me like, do you have big babies in your family? And I'd be like, no, I have small babies in my family. And it was because Cody was a big baby. I was like in a lot of pain through my pregnancy, and I'd try to like do some hiking and like a little bit of exercise because I'm a big runner, and I ended up just messing up my pelvic floor. Like I was in so much pain, and through the rest of my pregnancy I was off my feet. I had to be on bed rest for a few weeks. Like it really sucked, and I just was miserable. In about 39 weeks I was done. Like I knew this baby is gonna come early because this is too big for my little body. I felt okay. I had a doula. A good friend of mine was actually training to become a doula, so it worked out so nicely. We were starting to like get together every week. I was talking with her through my pregnancy and talking about my symptoms, talking about my fears about becoming a mother, talking about how Cody was processing it. And she ended up doing a whole class with me, my mom, and Cody on like what to expect during the labor and like some training in the labor. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to get an epidural or not. She very strongly suggested that I didn't, but I wasn't sure because I know like getting an epidural is okay, and it's just like, it's not wrong. This is just my opinion, but I don't think it's wrong to use the Western medicine that we've been blessed with. I know sometimes epidurals can cause labors to be more complicated, but any labor, natural or not, could have complications. So I think that's just my opinion. So I wasn't sure. I was like, I'll play by ear. And I wasn't very educated on it, so I didn't know if I wanted it or not. Anyways, so I got a lot of training, and I think my biggest thing that I utilized during my pregnancy was the Bradley method. And I don't know this to its full extent, except I know the basic concept. I can explain that another time if you're curious, but I rabbit trailed here. Let me come back to the story. At 39 weeks, I went and I was feeling like some contractions and things were feeling off, and I lost my mucus plug, and I thought, okay, something's happening. I was pregnant all summer long, so it was like over 100 degrees every single day, and I was so pregnant that I was just not doing well. I could put a picture up here about like showing how big my belly was. This was like a month before my due date, so that'll give you some context of what I looked like 39 weeks. So I got checked. They checked me for any dilation and checked my cervix. I was 98% effaced, and I was 4 centimeters dilated. I was like ready. I went in to see my midwife, and she was like, yeah, you can have your baby today. And I was like, okay, I hope this is happening today. And it was 4 days later that I started to feel actual consistent contractions. Like for 4 days, I was feeling like strong Braxton Hicks. I was feeling like so much pressure on my pelvis. I was like walking every day. I was doing like spinning babies and like a mile circuit and like everything I could to try to get this baby in the right position to come out. I was getting like chiropractor appointments. Oh, here's like the biggest part. So of my labor pain is Peter somehow was like pushing something out of place in my spine. So in my neck, I was feeling these migraine headaches wrapped around my face and my neck. And it would like keep me up at night crying. And I had to go to the chiropractor every single day to get this back in place because it was really unbearable. At 39 weeks and 4 days, I started to feel some pretty consistent contractions just at home during the day while Cody was at work. I wasn't sure about it yet because when you're pregnant, if you have like kind of a false alarm, you go into the the hospital in labor and delivery, and they check you and they send you home. Like it's like really, really disappointing. And it almost feels like a little bit of loss, because there's so much mental preparation that goes into having a baby, that when you go in and you think it's go time and they say, no, it's not go time, and you go home, like, it's just like, I can't explain it besides it feels like loss. Like, I am not gonna meet my baby today. And like, that is really emotionally taxing. Anyways, I was kind of questioning myself when I was in labor. Like, I don't know if this is real. Like, my contractions aren't really the way they should be. They were getting more intense, to the point where I felt like I needed to call Cody. I don't know why, I just felt like it was go time. So I called Cody, and he came home, and we packed up the car and left for the hospital. They took me into like the small, like the labor and delivery in the small room where they check you and make sure you're really in labor and stuff, and then they'll move you to the birthing suite when it's time to have the baby. I wasn't having, like, my contractions actually slowed down. So I was like praying they weren't gonna send me home. But they checked my cervix. I was the same, 4 centimeters, 98% effaced. That was really disappointing. And they checked my blood pressure, and I had really high blood pressure. So they were like, we have to keep you. You know, if you have high blood pressure, you're at risk of preeclampsia. They're gonna induce you, even if you're at like 20 weeks. But before they got the chance to induce me, my contractions started picking up stronger and stronger and more intense and more intense. They were like, okay, we're gonna wait this out and let you progress. And it was the day. Like, it was time. My contractions got pretty tough, and they moved me over to the birthing suite, and they were filling up the tub, because one really important thing for me was to birth in the tub as long as I can, because they don't allow in hospitals anymore for you to birth in the tub, but they'll let you birth in the tub for as long as you can until you need to like push. I was sitting down on the bed, and they were filling up the tub, and I stood up, and the bed was all like, was kind of wet, and they checked it, and it was amniotic fluid, which means I can't go in, because when your water breaks, you can't go in the bath. I was super bummed, but I could go in the shower, so I spent some time in the shower with Cody. He would just like hold my head. Like, my pain in my neck was so bad that he would like squeeze and pull up my head, and that would relieve some of the pain. Like, those were just, that pain in my back was just as severe as my contractions, that were still irregular, might I add. So I've labored all night long, and then sometime in the really, really early morning, the nurse comes into the birthing suite, and I'm like, can you check me? Am I close, like, at all? Like, I've been doing this all night. I'm so tired. And she's like, sweetie, you're not even in active labor yet. I just felt so defeated. I was like, I can't do this anymore. That is like the worst news. So she called the midwife to see what we were gonna do next, and my midwife was actually traveling at the time, so she almost wasn't even able to be there for my labor. And she's like, okay, it sounds like you need some therapy rest. So she asked me if I wanted to have fentanyl, and I said yes. And honestly, I had planned to do I had been pretty flexible with medication, but I was just willing to kind of trust whatever my midwife suggested. And the nurse kind of gave me a little background on what the risks were for that, and the risks to taking fentanyl are very mild. There's a very slight chance that the baby might have some respiratory issues, so I went with it because the chances were so slim and I needed that rest. I got to sleep for like an hour. I still felt my contractions, but it was just more like pressure. It wasn't like pain, it was just pressure, and I was able to sleep through them for the most part. After I woke up from the fentanyl, I went and jumped in the shower with Cody again. The pain went away a lot while I was in the shower, just kind of like with the hot water on my neck. And I had these thoughts in my head, like, at some point I'm gonna have to get out of the shower and I'm gonna have to do this. I got out of the shower, I talked to my nurse again. She was like, okay, I'm gonna check you, see where you're at now. Your contractions are still irregular, but let's see like where we're at. And she checked me, and I was at like a 9. I was like ready. I was ready to like transition. At this point, my midwife had showed up. She turned on all the lights. Nurses started coming into the room. She broke my water, and it was like gosh, I had so much amniotic fluid. So the reason why my contractions were so weird is because I had such a big amount of amniotic fluid that it was actually protecting the baby's head from the cervix, which was causing my contractions to be irregular. That was why she didn't think I was in active labor, is because there was so much amniotic fluid. So anyways, that all burst out. And then immediately I started throwing up because I went from that weird sporadic like contracting pain to like full on transition like that fast. I remember hearing Cody say like, is this normal? Like, is she okay? And the doctor was like, yeah, it's normal. Like everybody was so relaxed. They just see this all the time. So I laid on the bed and I had to lay with this, like over this peanut thing so Peter could adjust just a little bit in the womb so he could come out easier. So I had to like go through my transition in that way. My whole labor, I wanted to be touched. I wanted to be talked to. I had music going. I was like listening to worship. I was like singing in my head the worship songs. I was like trusting the Lord. I felt so protected. I felt so taken care of, like so held. It was really, really powerful. I think the most significant song to me that I heard during my labor is called Highs and Lows. I think it's by like Hillsong. I'll put it up here. But that song I listen to now I'll be like listening to it today and it just brings me right back to that time and just remembering how faithful God was to me. So during that, I wanted to be touched and talked to, but right when I was in transition, I was just like, don't touch me, don't talk to me. I am in focus mode. And I was like, the whole time in my labor, I was pretty quiet, but during that transition, I was like starting to groan and like really, it took some like real endurance to get through. Transition was definitely the hardest part for me through my labor. It just took a lot of mental willpower. That was another reason why I'm really glad that I did the birth training with my doula. I'm so glad that I was able to have that time with her to understand what these different phases of labor look like. I felt like mentally prepared to handle transition, when if I would have gone in with no information, that would have been a lot scarier of a situation, like a lot scarier of a feeling to me. Anyways, I started to feel like this pressure, like it was maybe time to push. Not to be TMI here, but it felt kind of like I had to go to the bathroom. And I was questioning myself a lot. I wasn't sure if like what it was supposed to feel like. So I just kind of like quietly mentioned to Cody, I think I might need to push now. And he told the doctor, and so I flipped over and put my feet up in the harnesses. One thing I do regret, I did labor on my back. The whole time I was pushing, I was thinking, I wish I had a bar to like pull up on and like bear down on. I don't know, that just felt like the natural thing to do, but instead I was like on my back. Oh, I never ended up getting the epidural. When I was getting all strapped in, ready to push, I like looked over at the nurse next to me and I was like, epidural, I'm ready for the epidural. Like all confident, and she was like, oh sweetie, you're about to push, like that ship has sailed. I had missed that chance. So I started pushing about 7 a.m. and got about 2 pushes in, and in between pushes I would fall asleep and I would start dreaming, and I can't remember what I was dreaming of, but I remember I dreamt. Cody tells me that they were just, everyone would be silent in between pushes. I would be sleeping and everyone would be silent, and then the contractions would come back in and I would wake up and everyone would be talking while I was pushing, and then I would fall asleep and everyone got silent. It was interesting. And about an hour and a half after pushing, Peter Allen was born. Seeing him come up to me and just seeing like him, it just was like the biggest revelation, because it's like that whole pregnancy that was so difficult for me, like seeing like that this was all real, like this was all for him, you know, just made it so worth it. It makes me all emotional just because it was the best moment of my whole life. I'm so thankful that God gave me my son, and I'm so thankful that he got me through that process and was faithful to be with me in that process. I think seeing Peter for the first time on my chest was like more amazement than anything. And I remember saying like, he's perfect. It was just like such a love that I've never felt before. I've never felt this feeling like this was all worth it. Every single contraction, the transition, the whole horrible pregnancy was worth, every second was worth having this child. So that's little Peter's birth story. I hope you enjoyed this video. I post new videos every Saturday. If you like these kind of videos, then please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video, because it really supports my channel. And I would love to hear any video suggestions that you have. If there's anything else you'd like to see in the future from me, please comment down below. Anyways, look at that timing. Oh, you can't see him. Peter woke up. Speaking of Peter, Mr. woke up. So that's it for today. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next time.